Okay, we're going to start with that American story and take a look at that Nancy Hart from Georgia and what she does as a patriot. So, take a look, top of 206. Patriot Nancy Hart glared at the 5 armed loyalists who burst into her Georgia cabin. Tradition says that the men had shot her last turkey and ordered her to cook it for them. Raids like this were common in the South, where feuding neighbors used the war as an excuse to fight each other. Both patriots and loyalists took part in the raids. Many women and children had moved out of Georgia, but the 6-foot-tall, freckled Hart chose to stay and fight. She could shoot a gun as accurately as any man. As she prepared dinner, the food, Hart planned her attack. When dinner was ready, the men sat down to eat. Seizing one of their muskets, Hart quickly shot and killed one man and wounded another. She kept the gun aimed on the others as the daughter ran for help. A group of nearby patriots arrived and hanged the loyalist. As Nancy Hart's story demonstrates, fighting between patriots and loyalists in the South was vicious. So we're going to be talking about how the fighting is going to start to shift to the South, and the British are going to invade the South. So on 206 it talks about a couple places, Charleston and Savannah. So we're going to start with British invade the South and why they invaded the South. Okay? There's 3 major reasons why the British did decide to invade the South. And take a look through there, kind of skim through real quick, and find out those 3 reasons that the British decided we're going to invade the South. So I'll give you about a minute or 2 to look over that. Okay. British invading the South. Give me one reason why the British invaded the South. Hunter?
So they could transfer the soldiers, because there's a southern port, so they can transfer their soldiers back and forth safely.
Good. One reason was there was a lot of southern seaports. They could transfer their soldiers a lot quicker. I'll put that one up in a second. Abby?
They expected large numbers of southern slaves to join them because they had promised to grant slaves freedom.
Good. Expected slaves to join them. And the third one, Keegan? I don't even know why I did that twice today. Braden?
The South was full with loyalists, so they can hold cities for them.
Good. So we'll talk about this first one. Loyalists. Lots and lots of loyalists in the South. Okay, they knew they could get the support, the backing, more fighters because there were so many loyalists down there. And they assumed as soon as they would attack, occupy, gain territory, they knew that the loyalists that were living in the South would hold it for them. That way they could move on and continue to attack a lot of the places in the South. Okay. A second reason, like someone mentioned, was, I think Katie or Abby, they expected slaves to join in their fighting. Dixon? Okay. So slaves were expected to join because they promised them freedom. If we win the war, we'll set you free. Well, they lied to them. Even though they didn't win, they were lying to them. They sold slaves all the time to the West Indies, so they weren't probably going to set them free, but they were trying to get as much help as they could. And the other one, like Hunter mentioned, was they have a lot of seaports, and one of their major ports is in the West Indies, and they keep the British troops stationed there. Well, the West Indies is about 50 miles off the coast of Florida. So it's not very far, so that they were able to transfer troops back and forth between the 2 regions, if need be. Okay. So in December of 1778, the British captured a port in the South. What port did they capture in the South? Finally captured one. What did they capture? Austin?
Savannah, Georgia.
Savannah, Georgia. So what they did there was they set up base in Savannah and started to conquer the rest of Georgia. Finally were able to do that. Then they moved to South Carolina and trapped some troops there in the largest city in the South, captured that. What was the largest city in the South they captured, Jacob? Charlestown in South Carolina. All right. Here is where, in the South, is where the Americans pretty much lost almost their entire Southern Army. It was the worst defeat for them in the American War, or in the American Revolutionary War. Okay, so now they are just down on everything. They're lost an entire Southern Army for the most part. Their morale is low, getting a little worried about what's going to happen next. Okay, so because of the loss, they kind of put somebody new in charge of the Southern Army to get it going again. I want you to take a look at Swamp Fox and guerrilla fighting because the fighting is going to change styles. It's going to, again, change the way future wars and battle tactics are going to be. So take a look at the guerrilla fighting section, skim through there, find out a little bit about how it's introduced to us and so on. All right, so after the loss, we need a new Southern Army. We need to put someone in charge of it. And who does Congress put in charge of this new Southern Army to get it going? Brett?
General Horatio Gates.
Horatio is how you say that. Horatio Gates. So Congress puts him in charge, and he was the victor at Saratoga. So he says, I need you to put you in charge. I need you to build up a new Southern Army. And there was a group of soldiers led by Baron DeKalb, if you remember him. He is kind of, they're forming the core of the army. They start working their way towards Camden, South Carolina. And they want to basically attack and challenge Lord Cornwallis, who's the British general. On the way, they run into a group of small soldiers. There's about 20 of them. They're patriots, and they are led by, who's their leader? This small group of guys. There's about 20 of them. They're poorly equipped. They look horrible. Who's this guy that leads them? Keegan, the real Keegan? Marion. Francis Marion. They call him the Swamp Fox. Because of what? Why, I mean, think about it. It doesn't say why they called him that, but he provided Gates with knowledge, and this probably could tell you why they call him the Swamp Fox. What kind of knowledge does he provide us with, or provide Gates with?
The guerrilla fighting.
He gets us into the guerrilla fighting, and what else tells you that maybe why he got his nickname the Swamp Fox in there? Brennan? He's in the swamp a lot. He knows the swamp like the back of his hand. He knows the swampland area in South Carolina. So Gates says, all right, what I need you to do is go in these swamps and destroy all the boats the British have in there. That way it kind of cuts off communication with Charlestown. So they did this. Well, then we're in August, and Gates's army now runs into a group of British troops. The Americans, what's their problem right now? There's brand new kind of Southern Army. What's the problem, Dev?
We're in condition to fight.
No condition to fight. Totally out of supplies. They're starving to death almost. They're not ready to rock and roll. So Gates, they run into him. It's time to fight. What does Gates do? How does he line up his soldiers? They're doing rows and columns. How's he line them up, Abby? Okay, Hunter.
The untrained in the front and the veterans in the back.
Yes, he puts the inexperienced, untrained guys up front. He puts the veterans in the back. Makes no sense. You want your veterans up front because they know what's going on. So here come the British and attack, and what do the inexperienced guys do? Well, think about what you would do. Dev? They turned and ran because they were scared, they were shocked, they were like, ah. So they turned and ran. Well, Gates is their leader. What does he do as they run? Brett? He ran with them. He turned and ran, chickened out. He was the general. DeKalb stuck around. He stayed there. He fought with his men. And what ended up happening to him? It doesn't really say in there, but we talked about DeKalb last section, I think. Dev?
He got fatal wounds.
Yeah, he got shot like 11 times, sticking with his men no matter what, and he ended up dying. Yes, he's the German that came and helped. So now, again, Gates is going to lose his job. The American spirits are way low because of... Okay, so now the fighting is going on in the swamps, and like Cooper mentioned, I think it was Cooper that mentioned he introduced guerrilla fighting to us. He introduced this style because there's only his group of guys, there was only about 20 of them. They were fighting in the swamps, and they used the type of fighting that a guerrilla would use. And what are guerrillas? Not the gorillas, like the monkeys, the different ones. G-U-E. What's a guerrilla, Dev?
Small bands of fighters who weaken the army. It's surprise attack.
Yep.
Basically.
Small guys, small bands of armies, so like the 20 patriots they had, but they use surprise raids, hit and run. They try to blend in with what their surroundings was. So think of this guy they call a swamp fox, and he's trying to blend into a swamp, basically. He's probably got mud and muck and all that stuff all over him, blending in as best as he can with a swamp. This type of fighting changed the way war was going to be fought, because before they were standing shoulder to shoulder in rows, and when it was time to fight, it was almost like everybody ready, go. The front row would kneel, the second row would crouch, the third row would stand, everyone would shoot, no one aimed at anything, they just shot, and we do it again. Now that we've got the guerrilla tactics, we're blending into our scenes, we're trying to hide behind trees, we're running from one tree to the next. As soon as you shoot, you run somewhere else. And you just tried to blend in as best as you could. Okay? I mean, think about the soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. What type of uniforms do they wear? The camouflage, tan, sandy-colored camouflage because it's desert over there and you want to blend in. You see on 207, that's probably a picture of Vietnam, I'm thinking. Those soldiers are wearing the green camouflage because it's very green and they're blending in with their surroundings. Okay. Now, not just the Patriots, both Patriots and Loyalists, both sides used the guerrilla bands and formed guerrilla fighting. They used that style. So it's a new type of tactic. Alright, flip it over to 209. Okay, things are going bad for us again, but it's going to change back to the good. You can tell because it's called the tide turn. So things are going to change back for the good for us. I want you to take a look at this and find out who Washington puts in charge after he fires Gates, and what we do to the British. Okay, because it's getting close to the war, to being over. Okay, take a look at that tide turns section. What are they starting to think over in Britain, those leaders? They're getting, they're discussing what's going on in the war, and they're starting to think, what? What are they starting to think, Brett?
Independence wouldn't do that. Would not be so bad.
Right. We've been fighting, or entering the 6th year of war. We've been fighting 5 full years, almost 6 now, and it's dragging on, and they're starting to think that maybe independence is not that bad. Okay? So Washington says about Gates, he's done. That was not what a general does. So who does he put in charge now of the Southern Army, Keegan? Nathaniel Greene. And Nathaniel Greene is a Quaker. And what do Quakers believe in? Braden?
They're pacifists.
They're pacifists. And what does that mean? What's a pacifist, Cooper?
They don't like to fight.
Yep, they don't believe in war. They're opposed to war. Okay? So, under Nathaniel Greene's command, they are basically trying to avoid big battles because the British had obviously better firepower than we did. So, instead of having big battles, what were the Americans doing to the British to try to win? Deb?
They let the British chase them around everywhere.
Yeah. They basically let them chase them around the countryside, make them follow from here to there. And it started to drag on. And what was their goal to have them chase them around? I mean, why would they have them chase them around the countryside day after day, going from here to there? Why would they do this? What would it do to somebody? Dev?
Make them tired, so then when they were tired, Americans fight.
Yes, they wanted to wear them out, and as soon as they were wore out, then they would attack. And that was what they were trying to do. Well, according to British leaders, this was just dragging on. A lot of people in Britain were starting to oppose the war altogether, and that's when they started to think maybe the independence for these people over here is not that bad. Okay, so now we're in 1781. The war is going to end. We'll talk a little bit about how the war ends, where it ends. Okay, so the surrender. Where's my page turn? Okay. This happens in 1781. All right, Lord Cornwallis, he's the British general, and he decides, well, right now I guess most of the fighting's taking place in Virginia, and he decides to set up base somewhere in Virginia, a pretty good spot. Where does he choose as his spot to set up base here in Virginia? Oh, good job. Keegan? Yorktown. He sets up base at Yorktown, Virginia. It's a peninsula in the Chesapeake Bay, and the reason he set up base in Yorktown was for what reason? What did he think would be easy for him to have here or receive in Yorktown? Lindsay, what was the reason he set up in Yorktown?
So you could receive supplies
Good.
by ship.
Yep, so he could receive supplies by ship from New York, probably. Here's New York. Oops, I don't have it on pen, but here it comes down here. They get their supplies from New York. So he thought being on a peninsula would be a good spot for him, receiving supplies, and so he's got his base set up there. Flip it to 210. Washington thinks him being on this peninsula is a